Hey folks, well welcome back to Jack's Corner where truth and reality have a seat at the table. We are in so much trouble and it was all self-inflicted, and much of it stems from a departure from God. If you knew your Bible, you would not find today's news headlines alarming. In fact, it is all predicted. Anyone with two brain cells between their ears could have seen what's happening long ago and should not be surprised by it. So with that said, let's get into it. It's time for a second crusade. Christians screwed it up the first time because they couldn't get their act together. Most don't know their history and are doomed to repeat it. Why did the Crusades happen? Well, Muslims were killing Christians by the millions. Those they didn't kill, they enslaved. North Africa, the Middle East, and even Turkey were all Christian and were wiped out. Shame on naive Christians back then, and shame on us today, as it is happening again. Every nation that Islam goes into, they take it over because they are the spawn of Satan. You cannot coexist with Islam because their so-called holy book, the Quran, calls for your extermination. We must have a second crusade. We are in a war, and by the time Western civilization imbeciles wake up, it will be too late. With the advent of technology, once that is in the enemy's hands, darkness will consume the world permanently. I've been warning about the technological atom bomb for decades. I kind of liken it to the game of musical chairs. That's where everybody is in the room at a party and they're either walking or dancing around with music going. And they've got a group of chairs, but there's always one chair less than there are people. And when the music stops, everyone has to rush to a chair. And the last one that's left without a chair and is left standing is left out of the game. Well, we are in that game now with Islam and with China, particularly with AI. Artificial intelligence. Let's start this video of one of our most evil presidents, Barack Hussein Obama, raised by Muslims and communists. Isn't it funny how communism and Islam kind of go together? They're both tyrannical. Obama was tutored and educated in a madrasa dedicated to the study of Islam. His parents and grandparents were card-carrying communists. What in the name of all that is sane would you expect Obama to be, folks? But he was voted into office by cowards and those who were indoctrinated into false guilt and those who would buy into fake empathy, thinking that they could sanctify themselves by voting for a black guy, not based on his genius or intelligence, but his skin color. So what did they get? Well, for Christians, listen to this clip.
We do not consider ourselves a Christian nation. The United States has been enriched by Muslim Americans. Since our founding, American Muslims have enriched the United States. Islam has always been a part of America's story. There is a mosque in every state in our union and over 1,200 mosques within our borders. Let there be no doubt, Islam is a part of America.
Well, I bet many of you didn't know that or didn't even see that. But that's what you get when you don't pay attention. And that's who this guy was. Obama said we were not a Christian nation. Well, he wasn't a Christian anyway. He was playing you. But even though our Supreme Court back in 1892, in I believe it was the Liberty case, said that we were a Christian nation. Our founding was Christian, as evidenced by the language in all the state constitutions. But then we still fall for the deceit and the lies of the devil when he whispers in our ears through his emissaries of rewritten history. Obama gives credit to Islam for their contribution to America from its beginning. Let me remind you that the Muslims were ripping us off from the beginning of our country. And I bet you don't know about this either. Muslim countries started attacking our merchant ships and enslaving our sailors and holding them for ransom. It eventually ended up costing us 16% of our annual federal budget. That was over 200 years ago, folks. Thomas Jefferson went over to meet the ambassador from these Muslim states. And the ambassador said, and listen to this, "It is founded in our Quran that all nations that did not acknowledge that is Islam's authority, were sinners, and it was their right, the Muslims' right and duty, to make war upon them and make slaves of all nations that they could take as prisoners. And every Muslim that was slain would go to paradise. Folks, this hasn't changed. They're just lying to you. They have a word for it, tayyika. And that word forgives them for the sin of lying because they're doing it in the name of God. They can excuse everything because guess what? They always excuse it in the name of God. And when you do it in the name of God, you can just excuse anything away and be forgiven of anything. Folks, this is what and who the Muslims and Islam is and has been from our beginning as a nation and what they are today. We have gone insane. They, the Muslims, destroyed the Twin Towers in New York City on 9/11, and then we elected one of them as mayor, that is Mandami, 25 years later. We not only need a crusade against Muslims, but for those in this country who vote for it. Listen to the Democrat nominee for U.S. Senator from Michigan, El Said. He said, "You might like Muslims, but Muslims definitely hate you." This post was taken down, but I saw the video. His sister is a radical, and her video clips were played last night on Laura Ingram's show. Well, how did this all happen? The godless leftists, liberals, and socialists, better known as communists, closeted and went by the name of Democrat today, until late, quietly they opened up the gates and let them in. They are ideological soulmates, Islam and Democrats. From the sexual pervert Platner of Maine to Hong of Wisconsin, who wants to eradicate Thanksgiving and Christmas, as well as the border and prisons and the police, to James Talarico of Texas, who says that God is non-binary and that there are 6 sexes and that we need to put a welcome mat on our southern border. They're all Democrats. The Democrats' planned destruction of this country could not be made any more clear. Folks, at what point do you start fighting for your life? Are we capitulating? There is no paradise for those who do so. We need a crusade to eradicate that which is destroying us. Watch the governor of New York. 4 years ago, she wanted the likes of normal people to get out of New York. The only problem is they took their money with them. Now she is begging them to come back. Watch this clip.
Era of Trump and Zeldin and Molinaro, just jump on a bus and head down to Florida where you belong, okay? Get out of town. Get out of town. Because you don't represent our values. You are not New Yorkers.
This is how insane the Democrat Party and its supporters have become. So how do you fight it? Well, you disassociate. You stop enabling it. You disassociate from all who vote Democrat and you have to become confrontative and aggressively intolerant, like I've been preaching. Most of you haven't seen how vicious these people are when given a little power. Oh, and by the way, if you mention the name Jesus in Dearborn, Michigan, you are likely to get stoned to death. Watch this American in Dearborn nearly get killed by Muslims in this country because he said Jesus is king. Watch this.
Jesus! No rioting, no violence, 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 no violence.
Dearborn has become a no-go zone and essentially its own country within the U.S. Shame, shame, shame on us, folks. I'd send the military in there and force assimilation or deportation. We have been invaded and it must be repelled. Oh, and by the way, the Senate candidate, El Said, said he practices Sharia law. He cannot swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States. What are we thinking of? Now let's go down to Texas, which is now littered with mosques. But then we have Christian heretics who held the door open for them. The pagan, false teacher, heretic, apostate, James Talarico, who was given to us by the Democrat Party as a candidate for the U.S. Senate from Texas, He gave a prayer in the Texas legislature chambers praying to the Holy Mysteries, who has so many names and equates Jesus with every other religious deity. Talarico is a dangerous, over-the-top, pious wolf. He should be used as a poster boy example by every faithful Bible-believing church as they instruct their congregations as to what a heretic looks like and is, and what will end up sending you to hell. This self-proclaimed transgender-loving believer in 6 different sexes who calls Christianity Christo-fascism and God is non-binary and attends a church where books contend that God is gay, and he has openly stated that our southern border should be a welcome mat to the whole world. If this man is elected, it will only accelerate the destruction of this country, and he has no fear of the advance of Islam because he's not a Christian. He'll pretend to be, but he's not. If you have listened to him and are discerning, he has told you he will throw open the borders, as did Biden, allowing millions of people into this country. I bet many of you didn't think about the consequences. Those millions that have been flooded into this country by Biden, guess what? They had to have some place to stay. So what did they do? They competed with other Americans for housing. This is a perfect example of how so many Americans do not understand cause and effect. Americans cannot afford homes anymore because they are competing with over 10 million illegal aliens, which has driven up prices. The good news here is that those who voted for the likes of Biden and Talarico get to suffer for their stupidity. The bad news is they will not connect the consequences of their vote to the unaffordability that they suffer today. And if you look close enough, these are the same people who have rejected God and are atheists, if not in word, in practice. Now, since we're on the topic, let's revisit the Democrat Senate candidate Adam Hamilton of Kansas, who was the pastor at the largest United Methodist congregation in the country. The evidence is in, and it is as clear as it can be, that Hamilton is a heretic and an apostate. And why do I say that? Well, first of all, let me say this. I was raised Methodist during a time when faithful men occupied the pulpit who have now been replaced by openly practicing gays, women, and apostates like Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton says he's read the Bible daily and finds it unnerving with all the errors in it. Well, Mr. Hamilton, if that's the case, why read it? What arrogance to stand before hundreds of people every Sunday and proclaim that you now know more than all the theologians of the past. Hamilton has the nerve to say that Apostle Paul was wrong, as if he is in any position to make such a wild claim. And I will remind my listeners that not only did I take Bible classes in college, but also did a stint in seminary and graduated from other independent studies, including a study of all the great theologians over the last 2,000 years. As I've said so many times, the Democrat Party should be called the Demoncrat Party because they are all infested exclusively with atheists and Christian haters. Hamilton further contended that Muslims, Hindus, and adherents of other faiths would reach heaven and recognize Jesus after death. The logical analysis of this is Hamilton never preached salvation because with his blasphemous contentions, he could never answer the question, what are we being saved from? And why did Jesus die for us if everyone was going to heaven anyway? He's one of the walking dead. Don't let him take you to hell with him, and don't let him take this country to hell. To my listeners in my home state of Kentucky, be careful listeners of what comes out of your pulpits, and if it strays from the word, purge those in your pulpits. Absent salvation through Jesus Christ, it is impossible to maintain mental health. And as we have seen in those who make up the Democrat Party, you devolve into anxiety, resentment, covetousness, and a hate-filled life of misery. Once again, you cannot have nor maintain a healthy mind absent Jesus Christ. Now, this next item, it'll be a short one, but I think it's an important one for you to hear and to be informed about. The Massachusetts governor, Maura Healey, just signed a bill permitting abortion up to birth. She's a monster. While some call for her excommunication, So it should be for all those who voted her into power. I'd also require the entire nation to watch this video of Representative Brandon Gill of Texas describe the various forms of abortion. Listen to this. You must not hide from this hideous truth and what monsters these people are, as well as the governor of Massachusetts. Be patient and just give this a listen.
I am an advocate for patients having access to the full realm of reproductive health care.
But do you have a preferred method of abortion that you like?
I do not.
Let me read through a couple different methods, and I want to get your take on how much you like these. The first type is called a suction abortion. This is when the cervix is dilated and a strong suction, 29 times the power of a household vacuum cleaner, tears the baby's body apart and sucks it through the hose into a container. Do you prefer that method?
I stand by my former testimony.
That sounds kind of gross, doesn't it? Sounds pretty gruesome. Do you agree? It does to me. I
stand by how I answered your question fully and accurately.
Okay, what about this one? This one is called dilation and curettage. After dilation of the cervix, a sharp looped knife is inserted into the uterus. The baby's body is cut into pieces and extracted, often by suction. Do you prefer that method?
What I believe we are here to talk about today is the FACE Act. We are not here to talk
I'm
about the legality
asking you, you're a pro-abortion
abortion.
advocate. I'm asking if you prefer the dilation and curettage method.
I am an access to reproductive health care advocate.
You don't want to talk about abortion itself. Why is that?
I would prefer to talk about the reason that the committee called the hearing.
Is it because it's uncomfortable to talk about?
I would prefer
It should be uncomfortable.
I would prefer.
That is just absolutely incredible. And how can you live with that? And how can you live with people like this in such power? They are monsters, and they're murderers, and they're full of hate, and they're wicked, and they've got to be removed from office. And you better be checking how you're voting and the people that you're voting for. Now, I want to move on to this next topic, and it's another what I call I told you so. You thought Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky was this nice, Christian, moderate Democrat? He never was. He never was behind the scenes. You have no idea what this guy's like behind the scenes. I do, and many in the legislature in Kentucky know. He is a corrupt far-left operative, as we have just seen with his kind words for Democrat socialists, and wants to be your president. Now he wants to get rid of the Electoral College, which would essentially wipe out any influence that Kentucky would have as a small state. That is why our Constitution was set up as it was, so that states like New York and California could not overpower the smaller states. You should be outraged, and if you have any friends that supported this guy Beshear, then have them justify their support of him, if not defriend them. As we have been saying for years, Beshear is a pathological liar, and I've proven that in previous podcasts and listed the lies that he's told. And he doesn't know the first thing about Christianity. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing, folks, and while he will someday pay that price, until then we have to keep him from damaging the state even further and our country irreparably. Now, moving on to this next topic, here's one where God help us if we do not stop being so stupid. We are in an artificial intelligence race with China. This is the equivalent of trying to invent the atomic bomb before Germany back in the 1940s. Can you imagine what would have happened if Germany had gotten to the nuclear bomb first? Well, that's how serious the situation is now with artificial intelligence and these data centers, because if we lose this race, you might as well start learning how to speak Chinese, folks. That's how serious this is. It is the equivalent of a technological nuclear bomb. Here's what Americans aren't realizing, and this is not just my speculation. It's known by members of Congress, two of which I had lunch with this week, one from Indiana and one from Georgia, where we discussed what is going on. Listen to this, folks. The Chinese are manipulating public opinion in this country against AI. They want to slow us down. So what do? They attack these data centers on environmental grounds to get the Democrats against them. And then they use their influencers to attack artificial intelligence and the data centers to influence Republicans on the basis that AI is scary and unknown, and therefore we need to have a moratorium on further development. In the meantime, China is moving ahead at light speed. So with that, folks, you need to pray. and you need to pray that prayer tonight. And until next time, I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.